Hello and welcome to another edition of AppSec Decoded. I'm Taylor Armerding, security advocate with the Synopsys Software Integrity Group, and we're coming to you from the 2023 RSA Conference in San Francisco. And today, we're going to be talking about one of the provisions of the Biden administration's National Cybersecurity Strategy, released less than 2 months ago. And with me to talk about it is Tim Mackey, Head of Software Supply Chain Risk Strategy within the Synopsys Software Integrity Group. The private sector, as we all know, generally when government says they're going to intervene, they ferociously lobby against it. But at least most of the private sector cybersecurity experts that I've talked to agree that the liability provision that Biden is seeking is overdue. Okay. So why doesn't the let the market take care of it philosophy work in this case?
So it really boils down to companies are after market share. Everyone is a software company. Right. I was at CES earlier this year. I know Cargill as a company that has plants and grows food for people. I was surprised to learn that they're in the restaurant business. Okay. And the restaurant automation business. Their businesses have evolved.
Yeah.
And so if you look at any company, they're fundamentally a software development company that does other things.
Yes.
And they may know the liability and behaviors of their other things extremely well. They may be the true recognized expert in whatever the physical world demands. But we're now talking about censored everything. We have self-driving cars. We have intelligent roadways. We have automated food delivery mechanisms. And all of these things come together in a way that, as a society, we don't really have a regulatory framework around. So we need a baseline that says, this is acceptable, this isn't acceptable, and we can kind of target it. Every single one of those industries that I outlined, if left to their own devices, they're going to tend towards, how can I out-innovate my competitor? How can I bring new things to market faster?
Yes.
And again, when was the last time that you paid extra for security?
Yeah, right. Yeah, the question almost answers itself, that's for sure. And so, of course, there is a political component to things like this. If government is involved, government is a political institution, of course. So the liability provision and some of the others in this, I think the phrase, "we will work with Congress," shows up 9 times in this document. I didn't check that out, but somebody did. So the liability provision would need legislation. And do you think that has a chance? In theory, everybody in Congress wants better cybersecurity. But do you think when it gets down to the details of it, that we'll see this happen?
So I'm going to put the crystal ball is a little bit hazy here. Okay. But what we can say is that legislators are looking at the types of cybersecurity guidance that's out there. And sometimes they get it right, and sometimes they get it wrong. And in the NDAA earlier this year, they proposed a set of implementation details that didn't make sense. Like, provide your final SBOM at the design phase. Conceptually, that doesn't make sense. That's just not the way things work.
Right.
In the omnibus bill, we saw a new set of requirements placed from the FDA. Collect SBOMs, make certain they're robust SBOMs. Go and document vulnerability response processes and how you go and approach the security of the software. That's implementable. That has a certain, we're going to follow this.
Okay.
The distinction between the two is that in the land of medical devices, this process has kind of had a lot of influence in molding and shaping over the last couple of years. Whereas the NDAA example was, okay, we want to move things quickly.
Yeah.
And it's that whole process of molding and shaping guidance and regulation and saying, well, this is implementable. This is not going to be a truly costly experience for industry to comply with.
Okay.
That we can actually go and have something where everybody can be held to the same standard.
Right.
That's the type of regulation that becomes really useful.
Okay. And also, isn't there something, sometimes even when you're forced to do the right thing, you actually end up benefiting from it. And it seems like not only will customers and users benefit from better cybersecurity, but the people who make software will benefit from it as well. Do you, I mean, in what ways would that occur?
So I'll give a couple of examples. Number one, from a medical perspective, we want better health outcomes under all scenarios.
Sure. Yeah.
We know that software is involved in a lot of these health outcomes. If we have software that is built properly, secured in a way that allows for it to have a lifespan that is consistent with the type of device, everybody wins.
Yes.
A recall of a health monitor does nobody any good.
Right.
And by the same token, that can be applied to many other industries in a way that says, here we have something that is implementable, not in the near term, but over the entire lifspan of what the product has.
Okay. Yeah. Good. All right. Last question here. I read a story just this past week that said,
oh, this is going to be a good one.
It is, but not a hard one.
Oh.
One story I read noted that presidents cannot impose their will on the nation without the support of Congress. I mean, we were talking about legislation before. But anyway, the writer described the strategy as a wish list of the administration's desires, not a declaration of what will happen nationally. So I think you've addressed this partially, but think this through. What items on the wish list in Pillar 3 do you think have the best chance of becoming reality?
So the one that is most important to me is we recognize how the U.S. government procurement impacts the world.
Yes.
If you look at procurement things globally, arguably, the United States government is the biggest purchaser of stuff. Clear across the board, stuff.
Right.
If we can move the cybersecurity bar associated with the U.S. government's procurement by 1%, 2%, 3%, well, that's going to trickle through the entire software development world.
Trickle-down security.
Well, I wouldn't go quite that far, but let's just say I like to use the Veterans Administration as an example.
Okay.
The VA is a behemoth of an entity. It runs hospitals. It has medical devices, lots of staff, it has HR systems.
Yep.
It has ambulances. They have devices on board the ambulance. There's now computer chips in all these ambulances and software associated with it. You've got your mobile devices that are going to be collecting whatever information and so forth. The VA is fundamentally a very large hospital system run by the government.
Yep.
If the government sets a new bar for what the VA is going to have as its set of core deliverables, well, guess what? The rest of the
entire healthcare world
is going to move up.
Yes.
If there is funding made available to go and improve cybersecurity paradigms with respect to, say, critical infrastructure, same thing happens.
Okay.
It's a rising tide scenario.
The rising tide. All right. Thanks very much, Tim. Obviously, the cliche "time will tell" applies here, but thank you for giving us some insight into what has the potential, anyway, of changing the cybersecurity landscape for the better. And thanks to you, our audience. We appreciate you being with us. Once again, this is AppSec Decoded. I'm Taylor Armerding for the Synopsys Software Integrity Group. We help organizations build trust into their software.